workshop. A couple of administrative notes I'll talk about first. Some comments. Just go back to ordinances. So, administrative business first. Meeting notifications and responses. Tom usually sends out the notice on what the meetings are going to be. Please respond, reply to all, let us know if you can make it or you can't make it, so that we know who we're waiting on, who we don't. It's important that we have a quorum, especially our official meeting nights. If we don't have 4 people, or these workshops, if we don't have enough people here to reasonably discuss changes and get a group to agree, I think we're wasting our time, so we'll just cancel the meeting. So, can you in the back hear me okay?
If you speak up like that, yeah.
So that's first order. The monthly town. So this will be our seating arrangement for these workshops. I think it's easier. We can see each other. We're in a big long table. I know Debbie down here is always trying to hear. So we'll set up like this for the workshops, and then for the official township meetings, we will have to have the L shape as normal, a little more official that way. I don't want to block the public out. It's just, I think we're more official working in this manner. I'm going to run the overall meetings, but when we're working on these ordinances, I'm going to ask for some help. Bob, I'm going to look to you as the chairman or the vice chairman. Will you kind of facilitate discussions on the ordinances and the changes and go through them? The reason being, last week or last time we met, I was trying to take notes, things I have to talk to Mary about, Sylvia, and also keep the conversation going. I just found I was getting frustrated. So, I can take notes if there's things we need to talk to them about and get back to, and I'll certainly participate. But I'll run the meetings if you can facilitate the discussions. Thank you. Google Groups. We've also got an invitation to join Google Groups. I don't know how this is going to work. I've never used it before. I'm just trying to come up with a collaborative way that we all can keep track of everything. The email I get comes into my personal email, I get spam, I get, stuff from my mother and stuff from friends, and then I get the township business. And it's really hard to keep track of the file. So this Google Groups thing, I think, is this interesting concept. We can store all of our emails. We can link to, it's linked to Google Drive, so we can put all our files there, things that get sent to us as attachments. I will manage it. I'll move them to the Google Drive. We can link to the Google Calendar, and I'll put all of our future meeting dates on the calendar. We can adjust them as we go, but if you're making plans for vacation or something, you can always check to see when we think the meeting's going to be that month. And that just gives us a different avenue. You can always go on the township website. However, it's in 5 different places. And this will just be one collaborative place for all of us. If anybody doesn't want to use it, that's fine. Business as usual will continue with Tom or myself or somebody sending out emails to everybody. But if we include the Google Groups email, it will go to that site, and it's a place where we can all go and find things. To our solicitor here, if we were ever to get in trouble or do something wrong, it's discoverable, right?
That is correct.
Give them, here you go, this is all our stuff. It's all in place. So we're going to try it, see how it works. I'll try to manage it as best I can. Let's just give it a shot. So I sent everybody an invite. I said, you don't want to accept it until you and I hope it got to everybody.
I'm not sure if I just deleted it real quick because it wasn't.
Yeah, it's a
I get so much.
Lancaster.
So if you could send me another invite, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
I think I got it covered.
So I haven't done any of it yet, but does it have ability for who can touch, edit, modify files? Because we probably want to restrict that, mainly for John's purposes and also to really.
So there's owners, managers, and users. Users only have access
was even thinking maybe even more restricted than that, but we started to say, I was wondering if we always want to be users. And one or two minutes. Yeah.
Well-
And now I'm thinking mainly for our carnival purposes, making sure it doesn't accidentally disappear. And so it's pretty easy to do it.
It's very easy to highlight something and then just say,
Oops.
even if you highlight something in return, it's gonna take that. So yeah, it's kind of,
One thing we need to be clear about, it's not an official township site where we make decisions.
it's right.
It's just a record storage area for our use. We collaborate files so that we have easier access to that. The current procedure, which is everybody's inbox, maybe go to the website, maybe I'll find it here. Somebody hand it, if I get a handout, I'll scan it and put it in there so that we have everything in one place. Just a collaborative way to work. So I'd like to give that a try, see how it works. So I'll resend out the ones. Okay, I'd like to open it up for public comment. Sir?
Bert Stolzen, about 230 Camp Run Road. Since I found out last time at your meeting, you guys will be doing the zoning, I think there needs to be some changes to R1 zoning. I have an issue with our neighbor, unfortunately, who took a beautiful estate that Phil Lowe owned. Phil was your township solicitor for years, and he's basically turned from a beautiful property into a disaster. And it didn't just happen. You know, I think it goes back to Ben Kramer. I approached, I talked to Sylvia about it, I talked to Mary Hess about it. And the current regulations for our water is really not what we can do. So I'm thinking maybe there's some things we can do. You guys are the experts, but he's basically, he had permanent fencing in the back, which he put in after Phil left for his cows. But now he's decided that he wants to put the cows in the front door and the side door. And he's used Tractor Supply, $2 posts, electric fencing. And mowing, he mowed for the first time all year 2 days ago. He mowed out by the road and he took one pass up and down each lane of the driveway. All the neighbors have commented what a disaster this place has become. And we all work really hard at keeping our places up. And he's pretty much affecting all of our property values by doing what he's doing. So I've got some questions and suggestions, but I also am asking maybe for your advice as to what could be done to keep somebody from just letting the place go. Maybe I'll start with my suggestions. Right now in Chapter 18, nuisances, in paragraph E, it talks about height of the grass, 18 inches. It seems pretty high. Now, we don't designate pasture versus lawn, but maybe we should. And I'm saying that if it's not pasture, if you're not going to bale this for hay, then maybe it needs to be 12 inches. You know, maybe we need to bring that down to 18 inches. Seems pretty high for grass. Right now, he's at 2 feet. So Sylvia will be coming in and talking to you about that. But so that's one thing. Reduce the size of the height of the grass. The other thing is the fines. The fines seem maybe a little outdated. Under these fines, A through I, your second offense starts at $250. You get it written, and then you get your second offense is $250. I'm saying increase all those by $250. So the second offense becomes $500. The third offense, instead of $500, becomes $750. The fourth offense, $750, goes to $1,000. The fifth offense from $1,000 to $1,250. Just an idea, but just to make them wake up to the fact that you can't be doing this. The other ones, the J through D, I think those should all be doubled. I mean, we don't give a fine until the third offense, and that fine's $100. So I think all of those should be doubled. You know, the first one's 100, go to 200, it just goes up. So my question, a couple questions I have are, shouldn't we have, if somebody decides to put cows in their front yard, shouldn't they have permanent fencing? Even if it's just high fence or fence, I mean, I'm not asking for board fence, but you can go down and get a $2 post and run an electric fence and turn your front yard into a cow pasture. You know, and if you, well, that's one question. Should it be permanent fencing if you're gonna put cows in your front yard? The other question is, do we have any minimum between the house and the pasture? Because he runs, his front yard now is now pasture, it goes right up to the front of his house. So I don't know if how good that is with snakes and rats and mice and all that kind of stuff, but he mows nothing around the house. So that sounds like maybe there could be something there. Because even if, well, the other thing is, this is a hobby for him. This started out as a small 2-stall horse barn with 2 horses. He did put a run-in shed in the back, and maybe has 10 cows in it. But this is his hobby. This is not, I understand agriculture for one, but, you know, it's kind of unacceptable. So, let's see if I have another question here. Oh, and how do we stipulate between lawn and pasture? You know, is there anything in the zoning that stipulates between the two of those? So maybe that's something we could look at. And so, bottom line is, you know, we've got a little gem here with our township. We're trying to upscale Route 19 corridor. You know, we're doing fencing and company or development that comes in. We're doing landscaping, we're doing buffers. And just because you're in R1 shouldn't mean that you can get away with virtually doing no requirements to keep your place up. So I maybe asked it, well, Sylvia, you've driven by the place, so you know where it is. I'm talking about, I didn't mention the address, it's 230 Camp Road, it's on the 238. But one of you might want to drive by and see what I'm talking about. So, and it didn't just happen. You know, like I said, I've been going back to Bank Kramer.
Maybe you told me about it last
Yeah,
year.
and I talked to Mary about it. So right now they're saying, well, there's really nothing you can do. But I just, since you're switching zoning or looking at zoning, maybe there's
I
something.
do have a question for you. What does he have for fences and steel posts?
No, not even that. Just those plastic step-in posts you buy Tractor Supply for $2.
And what's he got for wire?
He doesn't have the aluminum electric fence. He has the white. It's like a braided.
A road fence?
Well, it's thinner than it's a half the size of your little finger.
It's either a bar fence or road fence.
What's he do with the cows?
I believe they're for meat. They're Angus.
Does he sell it?
Pardon?
Do you know if he sells meat?
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he does. I don't know to who.
Has he got calves or just cows?
Yeah. And that's the other thing. When he weans the calves, and I know there's an ordinance on noise, I mean, those things boil for 3 days. So,
Yeah, my neighbor did the same.
yeah, and our bedroom's, I don't know, 150 feet from the border, so anyway, but the main thing is, he just, I don't know, he's lazy, I don't know what, he just doesn't do anything. So,
The problem is it can be considered a farm, and that's where all the
Yeah.
protections of a farm.
that's why we can't do anything now, but I thought,
We'll look at it though.
yeah,
Anyway.
anyway.
I just Googled most Pennsylvania township ordinances prohibit cows in an R1 district, in the front yard.
So,
We consider it.
And if it's pasture there, then it's like,
Yeah. The farm,
You have,
farms are exempt
Farms
from
are
lots,
exempt.
but local laws.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's
Yeah.
I think a lot of those townships, if someone put them in the front yard, they'd have a tough time enforcing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not making it.
Yeah.
No,
I just researched Pennsylvania.
It just seems that you should make a commitment, if you want your front yard to be a pasture, you gotta put up permanent fencing.
Yeah.
And again, that could just be
Yeah.
high tensile fence.
I mean, we'll have to look at, you know, what
chance of having something done if the cattle are out all the time.
Right.
If they're staying in, that's not the greatest fence post, I know.
Yeah.
But if they are staying in,
But just the site alone,
Yeah.
when you're talking an old estate, and now it just looks like,
I mean,
it's unbelievable.
unfortunately, there's other farms in driving past. There's a farm on Route 68, one toward Butler, that's, and there's nothing can be done.
But I mean, is there something new?
Yeah.
to add?
I don't know.
Something small.
I don't know.
Mow your place more than twice a year. I mean, I don't know.
We'll have to look and see what's exempt and what's not exempt.
Because here's the other problem. Let's say you go after this guy, and I don't know if he is a member of the Pennsylvania Farmers Association,
He's a farmer.
but if it's something that the Pennsylvania Farmers Association, they do everything they can to protect their farmers.
Right.
And if you go at, let's say,
Well, I'm not gonna go after it.
well, I know, what I'm saying is if the township forces something in zoning of that, and he contacts them, they will
Yeah.
come and fight.
Yeah.
And
The
maybe
thing
it's
is, when that whole
better.
development was set up, it was called Equestrian Estates. And I don't know if they went through certain things to keep it nice. I don't think it's in, the fellow that did that went bankrupt, and so Phil bought the land. And so I don't think those stipulations are still in effect, but it's, it's not your typical, they're not growing crops, they're not.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I understand. I wish all farms were nice to drive past and it was pleasant to see in that. Unfortunately, there's it's a very small group of farmers, percentage, whatever you want to say, the place is a dump.
Yeah.
And I mean, it is.
And he's not a farmer, he owns 10 paid management plants, he's not a farmer. So, anyway,
Yeah, we'll definitely look at it though.
yeah, thank you for your
Thank
time.
Kurt, when we talked to you last time, I believe we said even if we were to change ordinances, we'd be grandfathered in. You had mentioned, hey, well, can we at least look at things to put for the future, for our friends and neighbors who live in other parts of the township? And certainly we can do that.
So even stuff like that, if you decided you had a permanent fencing, he'd be able to get away with it. Yeah.
But,
Okay.
but,
For the future generations.
took notes of your suggestions, and when we get to that point in ordinances, we bring them up and discuss them, and you make good points. One of the things we're trying to do is protect surrounding homeowners from, new developments, or in this case, the guy who decides he wants to start farming, right? And you're living firsthand on some of the problems when it's not regulated, and let people do whatever they want.
Just one more thing, I want to thank you all for your time that you put in, because when I came to the last meeting, you were 2 hours in, and I said, I gotta go. How much time we went on after that. Thank you for your time.
Public comments, anybody else?
I'll wait. I just had a question, and I don't know at what part in the ordinance discussion to present this information, but this would be concerning a limited number of homes on a single access road for safety. And I brought it up to
Come closer.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know he's talking. Sorry. Sorry?
Well,
Guys, I'm on board.
Well, and it's the air conditioning.
So this comes from the Wrigley plant situation where we have a single road, 124 homes, one access. I brought up in a public hearing about the concern about safety issue. That's my biggest concern actually, is because they even block. I mentioned other townships do have ordinances for Adams, Jackson, I'm not sure if they still have them in place, but they actually have ordinances, and I have a copy of the Jackson Township ordinance, which limits the number of homes, I think it's 50, 40, 50, to a single entrance. So, when there's a time we can set that information, or share it with the planning commission.
Tom, is that typically in the saldo or in the zoning?
It's a saldo issue.
I actually think you're right. I think there should be some discussion. And I know we talked about it, and I think we actually missed it.
That's what I thought, that's why I'm betting.
You have a limitation in cul-de-sacs, and how many homes do you have in cul-de-sac?
But say you come in and do one big loop. For example, my Duffy Highlands project in Butler, I've got 111 homes off of one axis. But what we did is we put a boulevard to come in, which essentially gives you two access points in case there's a, fire on one side, and you've got a boulevard going on the other side. And that boulevard that connects all of it together. And I think and that was something that the township asked for, the center township asked for, to limit the number of homes and make, that many homes you need. The ability to, in case the entrance is blocked, to still get there. So I think the boulevard and multiple entry points is good, and if we haven't addressed it in the Salado, we probably should revisit that on our review period and stuff like this.
We talked about it because we were concerned about, having dead ends where fire trucks could get in and couldn't get down.
Maybe that was what.
No, we don't let.
So, we did.
When they go to the same
Oh,
level.
I can email it.
But that could be just a quick thing.
Oh, yeah, it's an easy fix.
Yeah, this is it, it's very short.
Oh, this is even shorter than that, because that has all kinds of just language in it to get, since we're gonna put it in the Saldo,
Okay.
it's actually, you don't have to put all preamble stuff in.
I don't even know that there's a lot of
sentences.
This is pretty short, it just basically said what you said, this is 50 homes, you give some sizes of the homes, in case you the buildings. If you can't do a road, then you have to have a boulevard or some other access or safety equipment to get in. It's very simple.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm concerned for safety, I think that we should consider this for our township at this point, or if we pass that point, can we go back?
No, it hasn't been, we're not past it because we're now at the point of we're gonna get the draft Saldo back. And if we missed it in that draft Saldo, we'll just, I think it's the perfect time to do it, and I do think it's a very reasonable addition to the plan. So we just need to make a note to confirm whether it's there.
So on Dave's, and I didn't understand what you did with email, I never had a group email for the planning commission, but I can certainly forward this section, Jackson Township's, so you can distribute it. Well, you don't see it. I can email it to you, or if you have a group email, if you're a planning commission group email, if you're gonna, I'm not gonna set one up.
Well, I set up the group.
So, I mean, we have access to email you? Okay.
Send it to you.
You want me to send it to you then, and not the group? Okay. So, what should I see? Sure. You have it?
Didn't you do that in plantations, one, put in the,
No, plantations actually have two access points anyway. I put the split entry in because it's just a nice feature, which I would never do. There's disadvantages, and some of the issue you're addressing, maybe you're looking at this out of boulevards have advantages and disadvantages. The disadvantage of boulevard is you try to bring in a big piece of equipment, a truck with a big trailer, 53-footer or something. They have a hard time if there's an island in the middle. So you need to push the islands back enough that you can get in. With Duffy, I've got an entry line that right smack in the middle. Makes it difficult to get in and out. So some of that kind of stuff should be, make sure we do that if we're cleaning that up across the boulevards.
That's it, thank you very much. Thank you, Vince.
Oh, you need this?
You can have it.
That's not good. No, it's definitely a good thing to make sure we address.
So just to continue that for 2 seconds, we can limit it to every say 50 homes must have an access. So if you go 100 homes, you have to have 2 accesses.
Yes.
Or boulevard.
51 and up.
You have 300 homes, you have to have 3 accesses.
No, it's, you just want redundancy. You don't want one per 50. You want multiple after 50. Is essentially what you're going to shoot for. You need, and I don't like, in Florida, where they've got a lot of these emergency access roads. I'm not usual, because no one really needs them. I prefer put in 2 accesses, not an access and an emergency access. Put in 2 accesses or put in a boulevard. You make sure the boulevard can meet specs. that allow for some of the turning problems.
That's what I was gonna ask you, so the boulevard would go to, like, what, how far in, I guess? How
Well,
does that work?
Until the boulevard has to extend until the point where you can split.
Okay, makes sense.
In my case, I've got a boulevard going in, maybe it's, I don't know, 1,000 feet in, and then it splits into a big loop.
Right.
So if you have a problem, you go this way, you have to have a loop, this way, you have to have a loop. The thing you want to prevent is if there's a problem on that entry, you need the boulevard full length
That makes sense.
until you get to a point where you can split. You want to keep any obstructions, islands, monuments, anything else back far enough from the street. Well, as a matter of fact, we should just put a turning, almost a turning radius drawing, like we do turning radiuses for fire trucks. I typically do those with plans. At the end of the cul-de-sacs, we have approved that roundabouts, things like that, improve turning radius. And we should do that for turning radius diagram in the entry. Have that as a requirement.
Okay.
I'm taking this notes.
Yeah, you writing that down while he's coordinating?
There was only one other thing that I saw, and I mean, I just wanted to, as far as, the slopes that were coming right to the property lines. They suggested that you make it 10 feet from the property line, I think that's what we ended up with, but I wasn't sure. Just because it could be maintenance. We have that 10 feet where you can get a vehicle in there or a machine in there and do any kind of maintenance you might.
I missed to do what?
Like we have a steep slope
Okay.
that's coming down to, that you create
To a property.
to a property line. Rather than allow to the property line, they suggested, and I think that was a good idea, make it 10 feet from the property line,
Who's that?
this other language, so that you could have access if you need, if you, for some weird reason to slide, and whatever might go wrong with that slope, you would have access to the bottom of the slope to do any repairs, anything that might need to be done, if you have drainage in the bottom, whatever you might have. You can get in there, I think that's where we ended up, wasn't it?
Yeah, we've talked about that a couple times, and I think that's where we're going.
Okay, I just wanna make sure.
10 feet setback from the total slope of the property line.
Yeah.
For maintenance.
We could also talk about being a top slope as well. So depending on it's upward.
Yes.
Yes. So if it's
Whatever
top,
it is, yeah.
top of slope, so that's something. But it honestly doesn't help a whole lot. Now here's why. You go up, you take a development, say you're sitting on a 20% slope anyway. Now you're gonna take this development, your neighbor's up here, you're gonna go and do a cut. So you're 10 feet off the property line, you do a cut, and then you bench this for a house. That top of slope is still at 20%. And that top of slope is, still has trees on it. Which you keep because you're trying to keep the buffer. You're trying to keep as much natural stuff as possible. So, I agree that it is good to have that space, but how practical it is in reality.
Can't that be appealed, Bob?
What's that?
Can't that be appealed when somebody came? Like, say we have the 10 feet, like Sylvia was suggesting, but you come up with a situation like, man, if we do this, we're gonna lose all these streets. Can't we get an exception, variant? It wouldn't be a variant. Modification, that's the word, modification.
I'm not a fan of modifications.
Me.
You know, I'm just saying, in a case like Bob is, I'm sorry, I shouldn't
Yeah,
say,
it's one.
I would just, yeah. Sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Because normally the reason you have that kind is because you're on a slope like this, and you want to take a chunk of it out to bench that for some kind of structure.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds a little more problematic if you're cutting top slope than if you're putting a fill in the base. 10 feet in the base.
The base is also important to consider, and that is your drainage swale. So you need stormwater easements through that swale anyway, and that stormwater easement through the swale gives you the access you need to drain the swale. It's easier to put it on the bottom, doesn't mean no work, I'm just saying. Having an easement on the bottom is easier to carry than the easement on the top.
I just wasn't sure where we ended up on that. Okay, good.
All things to make sure we review and we get it right.
Yeah, hopefully we can have that,
there's a lot to do. It's a snowball, and we can continue to work on modifying the next house. So that's the goal.
So if I could report back on my conversation with the solicitor with Sarah
Yeah.
Township. Very interesting conversation. She's just been appointed solicitor there, so she was not part of drafting the ordinance about the kids. I got pretty surprised by that when I told her that. So, but in a conversation, she said I'm a solicitor in Richland Township. I was mentioning this to Bob Brennan for the meeting. They have a 5-year maintenance bond on buffer yards, which has never been challenged, but that's hardly a selling point necessarily.
You know how old?
And I brought a copy
Yeah, I didn't say what it was enacted.
in 2009.
I would not be a fan of 5 years. Here's a practical reason why. As a developer, you finish your project, the last thing you do is you deal with your buffer yard, the top coat of the road, and you offer for dedication to the township. That kicks in an 18-month maintenance bond on the asphalt, buffer yard, and everything else. If you change it to 5 years, what I as a developer would do is, the way most of these things are set up, companies set up single-use entities to do a development. So that entity goes away when the development's done. You do this for liability reasons, all kinds of reasons. So you set up a company to do that development. That development's going to stick around for somewhere 18 months, 2 years after you're done, purely to get your NOT from conservation district, got to do DEP, things like that. So you're going to have to stay in business long enough to at least get the NOT. If you, and that coincides with an 18-month maintenance plan, so it all works together, and it all has to stay on for like 2 years after it's done. If you drug that out to 5 years, I guarantee what would happen is the developer would simply earmark 15% maintenance bond in the buffer yard to throw away cash, dump it there, close the development down, and say, fine, go with the cash. And then you're stuck as a township going and saying, oh, we're going to replant these trees. So, I don't think you want to do that. You're not going to be able to go back up to the entity because it's going to be long since gone. So, from a practical standpoint, I think 5 years does not do anybody any favors. What it is, the way the maintenance bond is say the plan is costing me $50,000 to put in buffer yard plantings. The bond is 15% of the installation cost. So you're looking at, what is that, $7,500. I guarantee you, I would rather throw $7,500 away and just write into the budget that it's gone, never to be seen again, you guys get it, and I can close the company out of it. Because it's going to cost me a heck of a lot more to keep the company open multiple years, 5 years, than the $7,500 that's gone away. So,
And it'll cost the township a lot more than $7,500.
yeah. No, I'm not.
And I don't think the township wants to be the landscape business.
No.
Yeah.
So, I'm just giving you the hard facts. Reality is the way it would play out in your life.
Yeah.
Just need to file.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Paul,
Is there anything else?
I guess-
Any other insights or anything? Nope, all right. That's it.
I know public
Well,
comment.
that was in the zoning ordinance. Yeah.
Oh, is it the zoning ordinance?
You talked about the buffer, literally could.
Yeah, well, she's not the, she was in one of the draft.
Surprised.
So,
And I think what we're looking for too is a, at least from what I remember, is, what's that last name? Is, like the procedure for enforcement. I think is one of the things.
right, right.
And their procedure is,
Good.
but I think it's really something we need to look at and decide what we want to do as far as what you all want to do.
Yeah, we didn't get, I hope Reserve Township had the solution, but they tried to take away their occupancy permits.
That's just,
I don't think that's enforceable, is it?
I don't think you can get somebody out of the numbers that are in the tree.
It's actually really the grass.
definitely making views on that.
Yeah.
A little bit like the idea of not common study or stuff.
We thought we
That's
had,
We tried that one too, so.
we thought we had a good zoning officer to solve all the problems.
I will see what I can come up with as far as enforcement procedures go in that space. Again, keeping in mind it's a pretty expensive procedure in the township,
But
but
I can think of is if it's not fixed within a certain period of time, the township has the right to go in and fix it. Build the property up, and if they don't pay, then the lien goes on the house.
Right.
Or other property.
Yes, all of that can definitely be done. The question is, how much of it do we actually want to do? And how much do we want to burden the township with all that hassle?
A lot of landscaping.
except I can tell you though, most of the time, whenever I just send a warning letter, because I always send just a warning letter before I send an enforcement letter. And like 9 times out of 10, they fix it. Whatever it is they fix. You know, so I think one time I sent an enforcement letter and they did end up fixing it after they got the enforcement letters. It made me happy, but they did it anyway, so I was just happy they did it. So I think most of the time, most people,
Having it on the books and not enforcing it, your discretion is a better option than not having it.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Absolutely.
So I think we can, definitely do the same that we do for many of the others, is, again, procedure, and this is what you follow, and
Might have to study your horticulture. You know, the story trees and all the different plantings. That's what, grass would,
yeah.
All those double counts.
All right,
Okay.
so I think we can move on to continuing with the modification of our ordinances. I'm trying to recall where we left off, I know the road center that doesn't need to be contract. So where my notes ended was the administration enforcement of TOs.
On what numbers?
243-46 of modifications, we, Paul mentioned that, we didn't want to do bylaws anymore. I have that scratched out, and changed the drawings. That's as far as I got, so the next one will be 243-47, amendment procedure, I guess. This is subdivision and land development.
this is the integrated version.
Article, administration,
Yeah, it's some different thing.
I don't know.
I think that's where we left off.
Okay. I think that's consistent.
And I do believe when we got to that point last time, we said, hey, this is a good place to stop because soldiers not here.
That is consistent.
Sometimes I wonder if, something like this, or at least at some point, we're gonna have that involved also. And this, doesn't do a lot of the enforcement.
He does the enforcement of the code enforcement, so the nuisance ordinance, those kind of things.
Okay.
For the most part, I do subdivision, so.
Okay. So Bob, do you have that part of the ordinance?
243,
Okay, so let's actually back up to, the whole section, 243-43, start with general.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll just start over right at the top of that. Or
My note
administrative.
says John. My note says John Blue. I mean, as far as making sure we're to the families.
Yeah.
So for those of you who at least have a copy, do you have any comments?
Talking about this fee schedule last time, I'm good with that.
Yes, we're keeping the fee schedule separate.
You two are saying. I can give you mine.
You've got a copy in front of you.
It's the first one.
This was handed out probably several meetings. back.
Yes.
Thank you.
So back, down to modifications on 46. Does anyone have any issues or questions on any of those? Yeah, the only note that I had on it was one down in G in terms of Mylar, since Mylars aren't used anymore.
I didn't put, I wrote down MPC, or something, I just don't remember.
Where did you put that?
It was down here at the bottom of the page, so I think we were gonna reference the municipal plan code for some of this.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
because-
just easier that way.
Yeah, because if it ever changes, because I know we found some things in, we have currently that are way off. I mean, they're less restricted, so it's okay that way, but so long.
So then section 47, amendment procedure. Again, I'm not seeing any issues with any of that. What's the Butler County Law Library? I've never seen that before.
I think it's in the courthouse annex building.
Oh, yeah?
About the county court is.
So does the township actually submit things to them?
Yeah,
Really?
ordinances.
After,
New to me, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So hearing nothing there, we move down to enforcement.
One is so non-specific.
Why is what?
Who's gonna be the enforcer?
Well, that's the supervisors simply decide. They would decide if that's gonna be the zoning officer or if they're gonna have somebody else,
yeah, they have special counsel, they're gonna have,
Right.
yeah, they have.
whoever. So, yeah, I don't have a problem with it being.
Okay, that's a general,
They may need that flexibility based on what they're dealing with, right?
Yeah, different enforcements would be handled by different types of parties, whether it's an engineer, zoning officer, solicitor. Each,
Right.
any one of those could be the appropriate
Mm-hmm.
resolution.
Can we, this says we pay judge not more than $500, is that the MPC, I mean, can we charge any more than that, or is that?
I have to check, to be
Yeah, can we
honest.
check on that one, 'cause I'm not sure about that.
Where are you at?
And D,
It could be 1,000, certainly not more than 1,000.
and the other reason I say that is because it includes reasonable attorney's fees, and $1,000 doesn't cover much.
Right.
So I just went, or even 500 is
we probably shouldn't have a number in here, it should go in fee schedule. Correct?
I don't know. I don't think on enforcement.
Enforcement, no.
Why wouldn't we? In other words, can't we pull all the numbers out of all these documents and put them somewhere else?
I would rather do the fee schedule, right?
I'm not sure you can do that with fines, though.
We find
Yeah, you see, actually.
it's a different wicket.
Yeah, the FTC actually defines different fines for different things, and they say, give you amounts, you cannot charge more than X.
Well, then if that's the case, we should simply reference
That's
that
part of the
section of the ordinance, and PC.
That's per the NPC, because if that changes, then
Then
Sure.
it's-
Yes, right,
Yeah,
right.
look at that.
That's
Yeah,
a
so
good idea.
if it's in the MPC and it's 500 comes from the MPC, we should simply be referencing the MPC and throw the number away. Bottom line is, I would like to see numbers disappear from any of our ordinances and all turn into a document with numbers in it.
Yeah, well, you saw what happened, we did that with
Dump-
the
Jump driver. Yeah.
people that thought we would take this for poor child. Yeah, because why can't we put pages of not less than the maximum allowed by the MPC?
I'm fine with something like that, if you're good. with
I
it.
like that, better
Yeah.
than,
Yeah, that defines it.
and that way it's the maximum, we're not. The maximum of the MPC allows is what we're gonna charge, and what we're gonna find,
Plus all court costs.
plus all court costs.
It's always the reasonable attorney fees that get interesting.
Mm-hmm.
One man's reasonable.
What's that?
One man's reasonable is another man's.
Yeah.
Absolute.
The attorneys I pay, they're well above reasonable.
the NPC does say $500.
Okay.
I mean, it's pretty much verbatim on the NPC, so section.
Well, even if, then if it is, we should delete most of the section and reference the.
And that's what I would agree, yeah, no
This
sense.
is reference that.
Yeah.
If the NPC changes, then you get a report.
Yeah, that's.
I don't have any issues addressing any other issues in that section. Anyone else have any comments there?
That's the right hierarchy because the court of common pleas, that's what.
Yeah.
So anything on the, section 49?
Is that? Yep, it is. Okay. Right here it says, township can go and do the maintenance situation.
Right.
We got it, we have to do that.
Yeah, actually, this is,
Mm-hmm.
I like this there,
Mm-hmm.
whether the township chooses. Has the township ever chosen to do it?
We have,
Yeah.
we're the ones.
Oh, yeah, development cases or what?
No, I just want private homeowner cases. We've gone in and they mowed, or there was one property in particular, that was really, we had probably 15 phone calls about. And we just, that's the one where I said the word, and then they didn't care, honestly, back to them, they did not care if we went and mowed it and built them, they just paid the bill. But then that gets old, you know, so that's when I sent the certified letter, and then they started mowing it themselves. Because our guys don't have time to go around
No.
taking care of other people's properties, they just don't.
It's actually quite a deal if you get that plus 10%.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you in my place.
They couldn't hire a landscaper.
That's right.
I was gonna say, you township should hire landscapers, and then build that whole contract plus 10%.
That's what we should do,
There are places that do that.
yeah.
So-
Our guys don't have time.
C, 49C.
Which one?
49C.
Oh, I thought you said 41, see, I'm like,
No, no, 49C, the municipal claims, I assume that is basically a lien. Is that what's referred to there, John?
Municipal claim is a lien.
So, is the township lien properties as well?
Yeah.
Oh, we have, okay.
Well, I'm not sure we can.
Since I've been,
Yes, I'm just, that's what I'm asking. I know we can, have we?
Since
sure.
I've been there this second time. I think we may have once the first time I was here. That
I
was
think maybe we've done it.
30 years ago, maybe. It's not a common practice.
Okay. I'm not asking for it to be, I'm just wondering how often this kind of stuff becomes an issue and a burden on the system.
Most really will correct anything before we get to that point. Not all, I'm sure, but so far I've been very lucky.
Can we go back to B for 1 second? 10% penalty, is that enough? Is that sufficient at this, does it reference back to the MPC?
You mean like, can we charge more than 10%?
I mean, for administrative, it would seem to me like maybe that's not enough. I don't know.
I agree with that, I'm just not sure what the NPC allows. Even though, in B here, in the 243-49B, it says, last sentence, in addition, a 10% penalty may be assessed for administration of the corrective maintenance.
Yeah, I think that is the NBC.
That is it.
Because gosh, plus 10%, that's actually a bargain.
It is.
We didn't know a lot about it.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, maybe I should vote my friend for it. You know what the township doing up there? It's gonna be cheaper than a landscaper, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I do think though, to your comment, we probably don't want the township actually doing well. You probably want to hire, you want to hire somebody, if they send you a bill, and that bill is then you tack 10% on you send in. Because as soon as you start doing the township doing, what rate can you charge? You're probably not gonna charge enough, if you charge too much, you're gonna get challenged.
Wear and tear on the equipment, the operator's time, their burden, costs, all that. It's hard to calculate.
Plus it's taking you away from things that really
Plus,
just need to be done.
critical area.
Does that liability be on the process too?
I mean, I think to do something like that,
Of course.
I'm guessing this, and maybe you I think maybe to do something that the township might have to enter into a contract with a landscaper.
Yeah.
Because you can't, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I've tried calling landscapers, and they are 2 months out.
Yeah, they are, that's the problem.
You know, so I don't know, but we can certainly talk about it.
So that's when you call on the 12 inches, so you get it before it's 18.
There you go.
Then you get into potential labor issue, I'm not gonna talk about that, planning issue.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
Do we need to add anything in here that says we have the right to hire, to have a contract?
No, I mean, I think that,
Just leave that out, because if it's not said, it's flexible.
correct, that way you can have, a lot of people do it, you know, contractor do it.
Maybe a combination, if it's growing out of the road, our guys take care of that part, and the contractor comes in and does the rest of it.
I assume the appeals section is probably straight out of the MPC as well. Do you know, John?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. 50.
I assume that whole appeals 2 paragraphs is basically MPC
Yeah,
language.
that's correct.
So again, I wouldn't mind just referencing the MPC. Okay, moving on to enactment then.
Did you mean referencing the FTC to the 10%?
No, I'm saying on 24350 appeals,
Okay.
the language there, if it's out of the MPC, should simply reference the appropriate MPC section
Right.
and just blow away those paragraphs with 1 sentence.
Yeah, I just want to go back to 10% and change that because that was dictated by the MPC again too. If we want to change it so it just follows the MPC, so they do the 20%.
Yeah, I'm
Change
fine.
it, so I agree, we change everything, so when the MPC changes.
Yeah, I'd be fine with reworking that language in B to be consistent with the MPC as well.
Yeah, that's
Reference the MPC as well.
Speaking of, so, I don't know if everybody has paper copies of the MPC, do you want paper copies of the MPC?
I have.
You have it?
Sure, if it's okay. How big, how well is it?
It's this big.
It's not super.
It's not.
Okay, yes,
I'll do it devil's advocate.
okay, that's fine.
Can you give me a copy as well?
Mhm.
One second. Okay.
It's great, dude.
I have it all line, but like you
Paper
said,
copies
it's
definitely.
That's easy.
like Tom's cover.
It's not my cover, it's the cover.
Oh,
Yeah, that's the paper copy. It's just easier to have a paper copy than that.
Okay, Article 10 then, so it'll be section 51, 2, and 3. Yeah, it's a standard disorder.
Yeah, same with boilerplate.
What is the ordinance number 37?
The original ordinance number for the subdivision control ordinance.
So is the one that we're working on, the ordinance number, is this 86?
I believe it is.
Okay,
I think
if that's what then, it's on the history there,
Okay.
second page. Ordinance 37, amended in its entirety in 2007 by ordinance 87.
Should that be updated in the minutes?
Oh, it will, that's standard updating stuff.
Modification.
Yeah, we'll just add lines, we're done with it. Yeah, so 37, I mean 53A, 37 will turn into 86, so it's the same question. Yeah, and the history will change in the opening paragraphs of it, so.
The dates adopted and all that.
Yeah, all that, that's just all administrative stuff that goes with it. I don't see any issues, it's more of a John can then also you see anything there, it's all boilerplate to me.
There's a bit. I think at this point, we'll have to update it for conservation.
You guys finished the landscape.
We did a good bit with the landscape, but I think at this point, primarily what you guys get drafts,
Right.
and then we'll take those drafts and do a sanitize and final review of it.
Kept the walls up.
Hmm?
Kept the walls up.
Kept the
Yeah.
walls out.
No berms.
Yeah, 'cause I think that's a zone section.
That's it.
Yeah, we took a couple of different things out of the subdivisions and we'll have to do separate ordinance. But there's, should be easy enough. The parking.
Our next meeting is gonna be, Route 19 corridor, we're gonna present there.
Supposed to. We'll see if, Bill Frank is available to present to us.
If not, we'll decide.
Even if it's staying.
Good Scott.
Well, I was on the team.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
So, did you want to move on to at least some kind of discussions on the Jackson stuff? Or what was your next?
We finished this, but we have, is there anything else with this saldo that we're gonna have to cover before we see the draft?
I think if we do the draft, then anything that we think
I
of,
think
we
that's-
can add in, you know, take out, whatever. I think seeing the draft at this point is pretty massive change,
Yeah.
and you guys don't even hear from most of it.
The way I would recommend is you give us the draft, not red line, just a draft. And then we take that draft, and then we do red line versions for the next couple. In other words, whatever comments we have, you go and fix, we put a red line, you strike what we're gonna strike, you add what we're gonna add, we're all showing it nice and neat as a red line version. Then we'll be able to then say, okay, we agree with those changes, because otherwise, for after every red line, we're gonna reread the entire document, which we don't wanna do.
Right.
We wanna go through and read red lines after we read this first draft.
We're gonna have a red line, and John's gonna provide his input. Once that's finalized, we'll shut off the track changes and give you a document.
Correct.
And then that'll be your working document to which you can then
Reread.
decide what you want to do with that, and then from that point, it'll just be track changes.
Yep, exactly. That's my recommendation.
No, I agree, because I hate looking at red lines anyhow, and I think this next version will be what, like you said, we should be tweaking around the edges, but there won't be major rewrites, because we should have captured that the first time.
Yep.
So once we get to see it, it's draft form, then we'll know if we need to make any adjustments.
Will the buffer stuff be in that?
No,
No.
because it's not in the sound.
It'll
It's
be,
separate.
it'll be a separate ordinance.
Well,
And you'll see
that's on
that,
the side.
you'll see that as a separate
I
set.
got you.
So then you can use that in a red line, and whenever that becomes in, whether it's folded into zoning or it's an ordinance, you'll be able to do whatever.
But I think, like, tonight's discussion about the access road, that's the kind of thing we're looking for. Oh, that should be in there, we need to make a change.
I went back and found my notes. We did talk about it. I won't say it was really hard and fast that they need to. It was, they should have to unless they could make the case for topography or reasons why they couldn't get a second access road. Maybe they don't have the access, they don't have the land to do it. There's topography reasons why they couldn't fit it in. They could put in a request for a variance or whatever. But we did have it in there that they should, but we weren't firm on it. We didn't say thou shalt have. It was,
I think we can be though, and then they can always ask for a variance.
Yeah, they call it
You
that.
know, I think it'd be better to have it in there, this bit,
I agree.
and then if you have hardship, then you come back, you know.
And they,
Don't want to make it too easy.
right, no, it should be in there. When they can't have that double access, then let's ask for other provisions that alleviate or minimize the problems that would occur without the second access, right?
I think they could actually,
The boulevard is one,
yeah, saying, we're going to put in there, you can do a boulevard, or, I mean, that's,
and
up
that,
to you guys.
those were my notes,
Yeah.
we talked about.
So we want to do those two, you can have one of these two,
Right.
and if, I don't see any reason why, well, I don't know any reason why most plans would not be at least be able to do a boulevard.
Correct. Two accesses might be difficult on some properties don't have enough frontage. If it's a narrow, deep piece, it could easily lack the frontage and you don't necessarily want, you may not even be able to do it on 19. You may not get an HOP for two accesses. Simple as that.
That's true too. My neighbor I know has 98 acres, but she has a lane going back to her 98 acres, and there's homes on both sides that are, she does not own. So that could actually be an issue.
The Bob's point
She's
about
gonna know.
emergency access, I've done plenty of those, and they are problematic.
And those become maintenance line for the township, because no one else.
And then property owners fight over the access and the responsibility for tree and falls,
Mhm.
that kind of stuff.
She has her lane.
That's a
It's like a shared driveway.
Somebody tried to
Yeah,
tell me.
shared
that.
driveways, run.
I don't know. Whatever, well, that's what the survey says, I'm like, good for you. I'm not telling you it's good. No, I don't. Yeah, not making any sense. Anyway.
Okay. So we're good with that, with the path forward on the draft. Is there anything else we want to get into tonight? Jackson Township. I read it, I didn't quite understand it, I don't have a copy with me. I don't know, I can.
We're having it on my computer, I might be able to pull it up, like.
Yeah, I read it as well. The problem with the ordinance is actually adopted at this point.
Oh, is it?
It is. It's adopted, signed, and done. And it's actually even online. It's already on their system at this point. The problem is, it's an ordinance that amends a lot of pieces of a lot of ordinances. So you really don't get anything from reading this document. You have to read this document in parallel with the real sections that it was changing.
I hate that.
And even
I was trying to read it as a
Turn stuff.
I couldn't, I honestly, as I was on
I would rather redo the entire road.
yes. We'll have 6 amendments, one for each one, rather than one amendment that changes sections all over the place.
It's
It's
like
very difficult to.
It's like a rata sheet or something, right?
It is, that's exactly what it is.
What was the price again? It's because of the unburdened cost of building roads.
That was one
Just one part.
There's several other pieces of this draft, or this revision as well.
Lake too, because Jackson's pretty.
And what I couldn't figure out from it either is, I never did get a handle on what their actual densities are in each of the zoning.
I think you're not.
It's clearly not in there, there are density multipliers in this amendment, but they don't have any of the original densities, and you can't get back, I can't find the original densities when I went back to their actual code.
So
So,
I'm wondering if that's purposeful.
it's gotta be something, no, I have to be missing something, there has to be. The only thing I can see is they do lot averaging, and I don't know.
Didn't they get incentives too for this and that and the other thing?
Oh, their incentives are, I'm not a fan of incentives. It is a multiplication nightmare to try to figure out, how to make those incentives work.
And it's too subjective most of the time.
Oh, it is. If you do this, you'll get credit for that, and then you get enough of these credits, and then you can have your multiplier go from 2 units per whatever to 6. Your multiplier, instead of 2, becomes 6. But a multiplier on what, I don't know. That's where I was struggling with the sifting through the ordinances. I think keeping clean, here's the density in R1, here's the density in R2, and throw away the multipliers. Have something when you do the PRDs to go and say, says something about the fact that if your density in R1 based on 1 acre lots turns into a density of 1 unit per acre, you want to hold that in the PRD, fine. If you want to change it, whatever, but make it very clear, keep it very consistent and clear per zone what that number is. Because I know that their numbers aren't equal to the multipliers, because I know their densities are much, much higher.
They are.
Much higher than what I was seeing in this document, and even this document compared to the original stuff. So I got confused. But what I did get out of it, and I actually think I was thinking about it myself, they do list primary roads, secondary roads, and local collector roads, something like that, 3 categories of roads. So they actually identify by name what these primary residential roads are, and secondary residential roads, and then all others are considered local. And what they do is they penalize you in terms of density, and it's a multiplier, if you want to build on a local road. I actually think that's a reasonable thing to do in some fashion. And I was just looking, I obviously don't know all the roads in the township, I was just looking at my area. Whitestown, I would think would be a primary. Nice is probably not primary. And even at that, the beginning of Nice, probably secondary, the second half of Nice, local. So I don't know how you break that up. Churchill Road, way less than local. It's like, you don't want to do anything. Stone Church is probably number 1 of the primaries. You go to the Ridges is primaries. Scott Ridge is primary. You got some secondaries coming off of it, but even something like it gets complicated. Like I was coming across East Lancaster, I was thinking East Lancaster is probably local. Well, it's local from Whitestown to Yellow Creek. Right? From Yellow Creek to 19, it's not local anymore. So it's got to be primary or secondary minimum. So splitting by road name seems difficult because it's almost per section of road changes.
What would be per se, you would define it by intersection.
But they don't. They simply list the roads. That's all they do is list. These roads are primary, these roads are secondary. And I'm thinking from our standpoint, in general, that'll work for a couple of Scott Ridge, Whitestown. It just works. Doesn't work for Nice, doesn't work for East Lancaster.
And then do we say if it's inside of the development, is it always a local road? Because we're always going to be adding roads. Like, so we're gonna be taking over Cotton Cross in Arden, so that's another additional road. Do you update your road every time you add one?
Well, the problem with that is that those roads in a development are already sufficient to handle additional roads off of them. Because they're already built to the right specs. The problem are the roads like Churchill Road that is still, honest to goodness, starting to gravel at this point. So any road that would be built off of Churchill Road would already be better than Churchill Road. It has to be by ordinance. So it's hard to say that a development road doesn't meet the criteria right out of the gate.
Other than length, or it's a short cul-de-sac, so that changes.
Sure, but I can easily see a development, and this happens quite a bit, where we're even often required many times, there's another parcel right next door. We're required to leave a stub, so we leave 50 feet for future access into that other parcel in front, typically negotiated during the design of the development. So I can see that being a legitimate access and not considered a local road. What you want to consider that.
So that you go and list every one of those roads,
Yeah,
you would have to.
but I do think there is some merit to what they're attempting to do. Because I do not think you want to go and say, oh, Churchill Road, yeah, go put a development off of Churchill Road. No, you don't. You don't want another road coming off of it.
You know how we have a fee schedule? We should have a road schedule of some sort where we can amend that easier than we can amend the ordinance. And we can change
Yeah,
the
refer
roads.
to the road schedule or
Right,
something like
and
that.
supervisors will vote on that, to say we're gonna change this section of the road from a local to a secondary or whatever or add more in.
Because they do change. As a developer comes in and he's improving half of the stretch of road, all of a sudden that road is now a more reasonable road. And it warrants it. I don't know how to do it, but I'm just, I struggle with what they wrote, but I do think some of the intent is reasonable.
You really have your traffic on 4 roads is what's happening.
When you say they penalize a developer for putting a big development on a local road, do they have that similar ordinance where they must upgrade the road within their frontage? Or do they have to upgrade the whole road to the next secondary road?
I think it precludes the development, doesn't it? Unless they improve it.
It
I didn't-
modifies the gross density, that's how they do it.
Correct,
If you're
but
on these roads, then your density is modified. If you're on these roads, then it's further modified, that's how they do it.
it is, but I think what Dave's asking is, we require a developer to improve the road in front of them. So, say I'm gonna go on Churchill Road and I own 500 feet frontage in Churchill and I have to pay 500 feet. That 500 feet's gonna touch dirt on this end, and dirt on this end.
It's a stop, yeah.
I know it's half of it.
So,
So the other half of it is
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but that's a legitimate question. I don't know, they look at their words.
and so the way we justify that is public safety, right? That's what we talked about, where, you know, you can't just have this road that needs to be 2 lanes wide, neck down to a single lane after you get out of your development, and then you have another, quarter mile or a mile to get to the secondary road. So in the interest of public safety, that has to be brought up to a standard, or you can't put the density in it.
Yeah, I don't see why not.
And that's how you justify requiring them to do that.
So where does that go?
Already, the road section,
Okay? It's already in there?
yes. You have to improve the road if you're more than 3 lots.
They only
But it's only from, my understanding, it's only of their property, on the frontage they
Can we
can have.
make that?
No.
You can't,
Yeah.
you can't extend it beyond their property.
I'll show you.
But it Bob, hey Bob, they did do that in Cranberry Township. They, exact same road as Powell Road, used to be just like Church Road, they wanna put a plan 3/4 of a mile back. They made them put a 2-spec road from Rochester to the plan, even though the plan actually only had probably 100-foot frontage, because it was one of those long, windy roads, but of course, like you said, on the other end of it, it went back to, I don't wanna say a dirt road, but pretty much.
What did the township give them something for doing? Or
I
did they
I
just
can't,
say, if I don't believe
I
it,
know the
they-
plan was denied until they put the road from Rochester, and it was just a tractor path originally. And they took it all the way to the plan, and then of course, Pardon me?
Then they had a straightening section too.
Yes, yes, and put drainage. I mean, it was a big deal for this developer, but I guess it was worth
I
doing.
wonder if, the township used eminent domain authority to get the extra land, the contractor or the developer had to pay, that settlement fee to buy it. Because, if he can't get, if the guy isn't selling, he can't do it, the township could use their eminent domain authority to take it right away, and have to require the developer to pay for that.
Cost though.
It was, yeah,
It's all on the developer, how bad is he wants that, what those homes do.
but they did it, and it worked, And then eventually developed the road.
Otherwise, you're gonna have a mess, you're gonna have
Yeah, true.
They may have, yeah. It was a long haul. They only had like 100 foot of frontage on that road, but it went back up to 50, 60 acres.
So John, what can a township do in those cases?
Well, I mean, it's like anything else, like sanitary sewer, water. They can exercise eminent domain to do that. The
But
cost,
can they require the developer to pay?
I think that's it says off-site improvements. So, if you have to get a permit on earth cut, you can require off-site improvements, PennDOT can.
PennDOT can, but can the township? Now, I know for water and sanitary, that's a little different, because as a developer, you're gonna pay for off-site stuff, and you're gonna have to negotiate your own easements or work on the road right away with the approval of the township and things like that. And it's not that the township's requiring it, the ordinance says, if you wanna build such and such, it has to have public utilities, therefore you have to get them there.
Right.
So I get it for utilities,
You have to have the roads
for the road.
to require it, you have to, thank you.
Yeah, you almost have to fall under the traffic impact
That's
study.
what I'm wondering, yeah.
And if you had that established and that was the impact, then you would have money generated from the traffic impact study to get towards improvement.
The
So
township,
that'd be township,
Correct.
Correct.
but what about developer?
making a developer.
Or what about a traffic study? Can a traffic study go in any way, say, for example, Churchill Road cannot accommodate 100 cars per day, or whatever it is, 100.
I've seen that
Can that
done.
be done through a traffic study?
I've seen that done through a traffic study, like a turning lane on a boulevard.
Yeah, for that. But I'm thinking like, demanding the gravel road be fixed, because the traffic study says that road cannot handle 100 cars a day. Can that be done?
So from wherever that road starts to wherever the development is, can we make that developer approve that road the entire way?
Yeah. Well, not make him say that your development is denied because you can only put 50 cars a day on this road and you want 100 based on the traffic study.
That
Therefore,
might be possible.
that's what I'm wondering. Can that?
I think
Can a
that
traffic
might be
study?
better.
Can a traffic study drive a restriction on that?
Like
So
I
I'm
said,
asking-
I've seen that done.
So it's just denied unless they do it.
Yeah, unless they figure out how to get it
We're
done.
not really requiring them to do it, you don't want to.
And
It's
it's all,
just being denied.
comes back to public safety.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So if you're talking so many
Good
cars
question.
per day, how many cars do you figure per household?
The traffic engineers do all that.
Yeah.
There's a couple of them out
They're
there.
smarter than,
And it's standard, it's.
Yeah, it's all math.
Because I was just, what I was thinking of, if you got 50 houses, you very well could have over 100 cars per.
I was just picking.
I know, but I'm just thinking, how many cars do you actually have per house?
If
Well,
you,
look at it
the other
this way,
thing,
Dale.
because.
What's that?
Look at it this way, on Saltworks Road, prior to Suzie and Bridge and all those roads being connected, there was less than 50 cars a day on there. Now you're looking at well over 1,000
A day?
a day
thousands.
on a road that was never made to handle that.
So we require them to put in public utilities.
Right.
So if we can require the public utilities, then we can also say that the road has to meet the, standards.
I think, I don't know
But
what
I
you
think
say,
still be
he
designed
wants to
so that-
offsite improvement, actually,
Right,
Bob.
don't worry about
Yeah, Bob did. He said, so, but I think you could link it to the traffic study.
Right.
Right.
I don't think you can say you have to do off-site
The
improvements.
road has to be.
But the road has to be able to handle what the traffic study says.
And that's what
That
you
I
say,
think you can do.
that you would say, and then,
Yeah.
So
then you walk down the path of you're being denied unless you meet the condition.
Right?
I'm not, who are those? I can't even, off the top of my head, Wooster's one.
There's one, there's a couple of.
Transit associated.
Okay, but they would have to have a traffic study by these kinds of companies that would demonstrate that the road system is currently adequate to support that development.
Yeah.
So it's just a demanding of the traffic study is what it is.
And a lot of times they're gonna say, well, I'm not even gonna spend the money, because Churchill Road isn't gonna have $1,000.
Yeah.
Worth trying.
But I think there are roads like that in the township that we do need to be careful that we don't just give them carte blanche to do anything with. I don't know what this side of the township's like, but I know my side.
They fly down when it's down there.
What's that?
They fly down when it's down there. And I hate to admit it, but yeah,
Beyond that, I think we-
language to that effect, and we can do that.
Yeah, I think that, could remember that.
Does that approach cure our issue? We don't really have one, but is it proactive?
I think very good, I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, I
I like that.
I think so, I'm just trying to get a consensus that, you know.
I think it's good.
Mhm.
I think it would be worth asking somebody, do you have contacts at Wooster or any place?
Yeah, I mean, we can look at their standards to see.
Because I'm just wondering, it would be nice to, it'd be nice to get just a shoot from the hip kind of analysis, not an actual traffic study, but if you had a road like Churchill Road, how many cars would you say that would support per day? And if they come back and say, that will support this many trips per day, and that trip count is a number that we're liking, I think it's worth doing. But if they say, oh yeah, it might be gravel, but it'll still support 1,000 trips a day.
I
Just
don't
like,
know.
Yeah, then we go back
I don't
and
know.
pick that, sure.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's the solution.
But they have to do traffic study anyway, so why not make it?
Do they?
The developments have to do traffic.
Oh yeah, any major development
Yeah.
does, yes.
Yeah, so why not put this
Why
in
not
here,
have them do the-
and they have to show us that it's safe for the amount of traffic that they
Yeah.
generate. I don't see why not. I think it'd be very proactive, I think it's a much better way to go. It's just saying, hey.
Right.
Got it.
Go ahead.
Did you say we define primary and secondary roads? No.
Can you define them?
Haven't we defined them?
We have not. You could.
So if there's any benefit for that.
I don't know that there is. I would rather have it by
That's-
volume density issues than by the type of road, because it can be questionable, because again, Bob mentioned you have a 24-foot road of all the new developments. The criteria is not the same as if you had a Kings Island. You know, it's night and day, and I think you'd be better off looking at the roadway and saying that these roads are unrestricted, Route 19, certain roads, but then these roads, there's a restriction on how big you're developing. And I think that would be a better approach, so you're protecting yourself, so if somebody does something, you've got a limitation on it.
Yeah, I remember Jackson's had a pretty limited universe, you know, they had maybe 8 or 9 primary roads.
Right.
And 6 secondary, everything else they said is local.
Yeah, they list 11
11.
primary residential
So
corridors
they like
and 2
overdefined
secondary.
So this road criteria, where does that fit into our ordinance?
I mean, right now, in our subdivision ordinance, we have the road classifications already built in. Your primary, your secondaries, all of that's defined as what your type of road you have. And then based on that criteria, you have how you build a road, what the widths, what the road paving requirements are, stuff like that. So that's, to me, already defined, already in as far as the classification of the roadway. And that would apply to anything, but it doesn't attack any of what's existing. So I think if you add a section in that says, okay, you have an existing roadway, this roadway can only handle this type of development, which would sort of fall back into the zoning aspect. If now you're talking densities and zoning, you can say, hey, these roads have limited density. So even regardless of what district it's in, if it's on this road, then you're gonna have density.
Unless you use them.
Unless you, well, and that's just it.
But are we advocating that, or are we advocating traffic study driven?
Well, it would be either one. Either you could define it based on a traffic study and say, starting in 2025, this road is X. It's already defined. And they could do a traffic study and say, based on core borings we have and thickness of gravel, that roadway can be 2 feet wider. Gravel is still adequate to support the development. Realistically, I don't see it happening because they want to make it easy. But depending on where it is, like if you had something on Pepper Road, you could potentially, the developer could say, okay, we're going to put a new entrance, we're going to ignore that, put a new entrance on 19 so we don't have a restriction. Even though the road's right there, they could say, we're going to put a new roadway, a new Lincoln on Route 19 and then it opens it up. And that would be probably the way it's going to happen. And Jackson had a development, it just got approved where it's near Fanker Road. They restricted the access on Fanker Road. Putting a new roadway in 500 feet from Fanker. So people that are going to go to Seneca are going to go to Fanker. It's not going to change the volume, it's just it won't touch Fanker Road until they come out on 228, 288, and then it's, I don't know what it gets.
That's one in Franklin.
Yes.
Franklin Township.
Yes.
So they did approve?
Yes.
Okay.
Did they make them do a second entrance? Because I know
Nope.
one meeting I was at, I know I was talking, they were gonna make them do a second
They're,
on 288 instead of Fanker.
I don't know, I haven't seen the final plan if they did that or not. I know the main entrance is off 288.
Yeah, somehow they were splitting it. They were talking about that. I didn't know if they decided.
Yeah, but I think the secondary was off Anchor and they mixed it.
Oh, they mixed it.
They mixed the township.
Did they want to
Correct. But it isn't, it's too close. It's something to use.
Is there anything we need to do or right that protects us? The adjoining township approves a big plan somewhere where they access our roads to get to their plan.
But we have one development, proposed development that can happen. Would be a new access off Route 19, the secondary access would be off either Scott Ridge or Cameron.
But it's not in our township.
It's not, do we have any recourse to prevent that? Besides punching the guardrail across the road.
Very tall.
If they buy somebody's property and have a 50-foot access, I don't know if you can do anything with that.
Because I know like some of these other townships just don't have the ordinances or the horsepower. Somebody wants to put a big development in Muddy Creek, they're gonna say, yeah, let's, go for it. And they're not gonna be able to stop them.
Right.
And the next thing you know, they're dumping out on a road that can't handle it and you're in a bad spot. But I don't know that we can do anything except work with the other township and try to encourage them not to. But still, they've got competing interests there also.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, if it's anywhere in the township still has to sign off on it. So even if it's a 50-foot spur that ties on the middle lane that comes into the township still has to approve it. And that's where you could potentially, I don't know whether you have the right to deny it, and you could object to that, saying, hey, your road can't support that, and fight that.
Could we have, make them do a traffic study to show?
Well, if it's written in your ordinance, I think that would be the potential, and we can look at that.
At least we'd have that.
But that only applies if some of the property, some of the development is in your township.
Right.
If it's all right next to you,
And,
dumping it on a road that then 100 feet down the road is this township, you have no say.
Yeah.
And, you know, the bad part of that is, again, we get rid of fuels, more, we don't get any more for the fuels for that, we don't, for the taxpayers of this township, we paying for that road.
Can we punch the guardrail across the road?
If the township owned the property,
Nobody assuming.
you could.
In the township, and the property.
If you had the rights to, if you looked on the map.
It was a township road, right? It was a township road, we can just close it. I mean, worst case, I'm just asking.
But then you'd end up in court.
Well, I'm just, they don't turn it over to the township.
But I'm thinking, if a development occurred on Whitestown Road, right across the line in Connequa, St. Stay here, you have no say. And you can't have any say.
Right. The middle lane is a good one, because there's a cul-de-sac at the end, and somebody owns that property, but if that development came in and said, okay, we only need, 60 feet of this, I'll buy that for X, now they have secondary access, that checks the check mark from Jackson Township, Lancaster potentially would have traffic from that. Typically what it is. So the goal there would be if the township was proactive and said, okay, let's purchase those pieces, so now the township has access to it, so the developer couldn't, then that would be one way around.
Can the township purchase pieces of ground that are not in the township?
Good.
Could, yeah.
Where's the township getting the money?
Well,
Yeah.
that's a different issue.
Everybody donates.
It's beyond our pay grade.
Yeah.
Right.
It'd be hard to guess what I'll get anyway.
So you could, if that was an issue, you could say you want this property protected, you might be able to do something on the ends of those roads that connect to your roads. And then you have control, because you don't have, when you look at the township as a whole, you're not gonna have very many spots, so that's really a problem.
I know Piper would be one.
Right. You got Piper, you've got Scott River, Can't Run, you've got, there's a couple on the perimeter, you can say, okay, we have some issues here. Either it's streams or other issues, it's gonna work itself out. You may be down to a few pieces of property.
Yeah, true.
Okay.
Who told both?
Oh, I like that.
Well, it was good to hear about that issue with Jackson and how they resolved it, which I don't think we care much for their solution. But it made us, you don't know what you don't know. So now we've thought about something else, and I think we have a way to kind of rectify or mitigate that in our own ordinance. So it's worth the discussion. All right, it's hot, it's summer, still got a little bit of daylight left.
I think our air turned off on
That's
us.
up here, motions to, oh, yeah, my fault, sorry. Any closing comments from our public guests? I said we'd have a more.
Congratulations, Dave, on your position.
Thank you.
I guess as you probably all know, I have serious concerns over the slopes and the setbacks and, drainage from all that onto the mainland property from these developments. And from what I'm hearing, it's not gonna get any better.
I'll make a promise to you, we'll try to make it better. We really will.
I just don't wanna see another family, 6 figures of the damage and court costs and everything, and nothing gets done. And I see that 2 families in account once all works.
Anybody else?
I just want to say thanks. It's nice to see you have an interest in, genuine interest in trying to get these ordinances and to solve those in a position that sounds like you really care about the township, and it's encouraging. I mean, we've got a wide variety of people, lots of good input tonight. I think it was good. Hopefully you can, you know, move forward and actually put it in writing so it works, but we've got to start somewhere, so.
Yeah, so we're racing the clock, we're racing time, we're racing the developers who want to commit.
Sure.
Because they get their feet underneath the wire.
But you're not rejecting, like the idea that I had the 40 or 50 thing, you grasp onto that, and, you know, different ideas. Bob said something about this, you talking about maybe changing it so they have to make the roads all the way to the main, I don't know, I just, very encouraging. Hope you can put it in writing.
We'll try it, thank you. All right, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Yeah, second that motion. All right, motion approved.
It was good, very good.